In the early 1960s, when I was in the CIA, we all knew of the sabotage and the terrorism program that was going on against Cuba.
In the early 60s, the United States trained, armed, and directed groups of Cubans living in the United States to do subversive activities in Cuba against the Cuban people.
There are very few cases in history that are political by their nature. This was one.
Cuando tú ves imágenes cuando cayeron las Torres Gemelas de Nueva York, cuando tú ves acciones terroristas en España, en otros países, tú te llenas de indignación.
Fernando lo toman preso el 12 de septiembre del año 98. Para mí fue muy difícil asumir esa situación de que Fernando estaba preso.
Porque realmente ellos son 5 hombres que están monitoreando las actividades terroristas que se generan en Miami contra Cuba.
El plan contra Tropicana se planificó y se organizó en Miami. Estamos hablando de 450 gramos de explosivo plástico C4.
In the early 1960s, when I was in the CIA, we all knew of the sabotage and the terrorism program that was going on against Cuba. Of course, we didn't call it terrorism at that time. We in the CIA called them operations for the liberation of Cuba. In considering Cuba or analyzing this country in the early 21st century, there is, in my opinion, one thing to keep in mind always, and that is that Cuba is not a normal country. It is a country that has been under siege in an undeclared war by the United States for going on 50 years.
The problem is that a lot of people are very ignorant about the reality of Cuba back in Britain and in Europe. And whenever one takes up a position in support of Cuba back home, you always come in for criticism.
I have a quote that I'd like to read, a very short one, from Richard Helms. This man, Richard Helms, was the man who was running this program against Cuba in Washington. This is from testimony he made before a Senate investigating committee in 1975. He said, "We had task forces that were striking at Cuba constantly. We were attempting to blow up power plants. We were attempting to do all kinds of things in this period. This was a matter of American government policy." This comes from the man who was in charge. And he was meeting with the President of the United States and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense at that level to plan these operations against Cuba.
In the early 60s, the United States trained, armed, and directed groups of Cubans living in the United States to do subversive activities in Cuba against the Cuban people. The remnants of those groups are still